Hey, so welcome back everyone. I hope that wasn't too abrupt. Had a little bit of a warning this time for a change. We managed the time slightly better, I think, today. So room number one, we had Adriana, Andrew, David, and Michael. So who was the volunteered to bring back the little bit of a summary of the key themes that you guys discussed?
We didn't follow any of your instructions whatsoever, Nat.
Rebels,
including setting a leader.
Okay. Thanks for telling me the truth, Andrew.
We've had a very, very, very valuable chat, though, the four of us, and that's probably, in my view, more important.
Wonderful, wonderful. Would you like to start with a little bit of your own key takeaways, perhaps? What you got?
Sure. Let me see how I go at that, and the others can leap in. We talked about the tendency for technology people not to be very mindful, not to be very aware of the individuals around them, to be great engineers and technicians, but not necessarily to be able to be great at understanding themselves and each other, and therefore, interacting well, and including, technicians, managers, and CIOs. And we wondered, why is that? And is there something, is that something we can influence? David had a couple of great counter examples that illustrated, well, it doesn't have to be that way, and it's not always that way. But I would say that as others of us generally thought there was a trend in technology for that, and I certainly, have seen a lot of it, and it's suboptimal in terms of not just performance, but whether our organisations are a good place to be. One of the questions we were just discussing is at the end there was, well, that's okay, fine, but is this changeable? Are these skills trainable? And I think the conclusion we reached there was, well, and I think I'll use your phrase there, Michael, well, they're not teachable probably, but they are learnable. And so that's a useful kind of observation to make. And yeah, that's what I took away, maybe some notes anyway. Anybody else?
We'd like the bit where there was the discussion around the balance between tech, self-awareness, and EQ. And that's kind of what led us on to, can all three coexist in one person? Which is that what you need to be a tech leader? And I think the general consensus seemed to be, it can exist, it does exist, it is not common. I think the other bit that I saw in there was there's challenges around the career path. Many organisations have a single path from intern through to senior dev, then you go tech lead, engineering manager, senior engineering manager, some sort of senior management. We need to have more paths than that, because after senior developer, there are some people that do not want to start leading people. They want to stay on the tools. And we need to enable them to do that so that we don't force them into management where they're going to underperform.
Thanks, Michael. Adriana, I'd like to hear Adriana and perhaps David. I'd like to hear voices as well, if you feel like sharing some snippets of what stayed with you from the chat in the breakout room.
I mean, Andrew and Michael summarized it pretty well. I think the other thing we discussed was emotional intelligence and how often it is being referred to or checked during the interview process, right? What do we really care about in IT? Usually it's the tools and, can we write a piece of code, but we don't really check at the interviews, or maybe most of them don't. How do you cooperate with others? Like, do you care? Do you have some kind of empathy? And, if you think about it, how the interviews are structured and what kind of questions are prepared, I don't think usually there is anything which could really show us what kind of person it is, right? And I think it's extremely important to measure it somehow when you become a leader, to draw the line and say not everyone can be a leader, right? There should be some other path, or maybe, you know, just stay where you are, or I don't know, explore some other things. Not we spoke about it, Michael, that, you know, the leader can either make his team flourish or hate him flourish, or totally break them, really.
Thanks, Adriana.
And I guess from my perspective, I was just, everyone said everything, you know, exactly what we said. You know, I think the comments I sort of had added was that my experience has been very different. That, you know, from my current position, one of the key metrics that they had was the ability for me to be human and talk within the business to the business. You know, if they wanted a technologist sitting at the top, you know, how would the executive group communicate with that person? So, you know, my skills and where I'd been and how long I'd been at those organizations showed my success in that tech space. But what they were more interested in was, you know, the ability for me to communicate with the other leaders of the organization and communicate in the way they wanted me to communicate to. And, you know, that's a skill that, you know, I, in all my endeavors, try to push down to my team, because the value proposition for technology is one, the technology solution, but it's also about understanding the business and being able to talk to the business. And I think that for me is one of the greatest skills you can have, because if you have a conversation with the business and you can understand that better, you're not reading a tech spec, you're actually reading the business, and, you know, your code is actually better because you get better outcomes from that.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. And I wonder, David, if it's to do with the industries, right? I mean, your previous industry at Australian Ballet, and now with Orange, which is the mental health space. So there is that awareness related to the industry, perhaps. And I'm curious about Lisa's input, because in management consulting firms, that's a must, right? I mean, we need to know the technical, and we need to be the bridge to the business. So it's non-negotiable. We need to speak both languages. Cool, thanks, room number 1. Any final comments before we move to breakout room number 2? No? Okay, so over to room number 2. I had Lisa, Marco, Peter, and Rob. Who would like to start summarizing, or just step up and share your own individual thoughts?
So I'm the volunteer for room number 2. So, so our statement we were looking at was about, you know, we're aware that today's leaders were often successful technicians who later moved into management. We recognise that although they are experts in their field, they may have missed out on leadership skills as part of their development. We provide them with support, the support they need to grow as people leaders and learn about human behaviour. So in terms of agree, disagree feedback, so we all agreed that that we provide them with support. That's part of our role. You know, as a mentor and a coach. And then we talked about how, you know, we need to focus on finding out specifically, you know, what people want to do and how to grow and support them. And so making sure we understand how each individual ticks. And that support is required to expand the leadership skills. So definitely we agreed with that statement. And then in terms of challenges, we recognised that making time to coach and mentor people can be challenging. Sometimes people being receptive to feedback can be challenging. Techies tend to be a bit suspicious of management. Getting leaders to operate outside of their technical comfort zone. And then the remote working is harder to really get to know people sometimes and what support they need. And adapting the leadership style to each person to ensure they get supported. So that was some of the challenges we talked about. And then in terms of tips and hacks, we talked about,
by the way, Lisa, I just allowed you to share screen. So I wonder, are you looking at your Miro board? If you like to share, you're most welcome to. if that's helpful. It's
I
up
don't
to you.
even know how to do that.
Okay, all right. Oh, good.
Tips and hacks, making the time to have one-on-one discussions, being a role model for the behavior that you would like others to be encouraged or to learn about or see. You know, I think there's sort of in that people mirror the behavior that you exhibit. Leadership needs to make it clear from the top down. Agile practices stimulate engagement, encourage people to speak up, stand-ups, retros, things like that. I think that's really interesting. I'm running a project at the moment with a waterfall stream and an agile stream. And that's super interesting to see the difference between.
You're just sharing your screen.
Or someone's doing it for me.
Oh, okay. Michael, yes. Michael,
I think Michael's doing it for me.
The wizard.
So yes, thank you. Thank you very much. So definitely the agile practices are very interesting in terms of how they encourage more that sort of human interaction. Dedicated time and ensure leaders are open to feedback. So it's two ways. Being open to suggestions, adapt as needed, always listen to feedback. And then general comments, questions, doesn't always come naturally to everyone. And I think that's part of what we were the last group was talking about too, like that, you know, not everyone wants to, you know, move into leadership and not be doing the technical stuff they're doing and those sorts of things. But, you know, I guess the main thing is to be kind and patient with everyone and recognise their strengths. Lead by example. Do not push people into leadership positions if they don't want to go there. If they were hired into a leadership role, then they need to embrace that and grow their skills. Leaders need to exhibit the traits they want their team to exhibit. So that's like the mirroring, formal training and feedback's also great to put around the coaching and mentoring.
Wow, you covered so much in 20 minutes. I'm impressed.
No, we did okay. We did okay. Yeah. So I think, yeah, we recognized it's a big part of, you know, what we do. And if I look at my time in consulting, you know, there's been people who I've worked with that have spent lots of time with me and looked after me and coached me, mentor, and I've gotten so much out of those relationships. And then there's been people who have interacted with me that just kind of came in, did stuff, wanted stuff, didn't say much, didn't really coach or mentor me, you know, and so it's like chalk and cheese. So I model myself off the people who spent time on me. So because that's you know, what helped me, you know, from a human behavior standpoint. So yeah, that was our discussion.
Beautiful.
Anyone
Thanks,
want to
Lisa.
add anything from
Yes,
Peter?
definitely would love to hear
Marco,
from Marco,
Rob.
Peter and Rob in whichever order. Whoever's faster to unmute yourself.
I think Lisa did a pretty good job of covering of everything that we spoke about. So I don't really have too much to add other than I think the most interesting part of the conversation was around remote working and some of the challenges that can represent, you know, trying to implement these things and trying to understand people and trying to understand how you can actually help people. So that was probably the most interesting thing that I took away from it.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Marco. And we'll see. I think we will allow time. We have plenty of time still to go around, and after maybe hearing, you know, comments from the other room, will be good to hear from each one of you what you're taking away. Peter and Rob, what about you? Your thoughts? Any reflections?
So just, I guess one additional thing that Lisa definitely covered everything that we did discuss. It is also useful to note that just some people do not want to take that leadership step, and I think they need to be just receive the feedback that that's okay. There shouldn't be that pressure to actually step up if it's something that they don't want to do. My last role with HealthShare Victoria, there were a few quite really strong analytical introverts, really good at their job, just weren't interested in leadership skills, leadership roles, and we just made sure that they got what they actually went to work for.
And when they reach that point, Rob, how do you enable them to continue getting pay rises so they don't get lured to the dark side?
Yes, that actually is the challenge. So, and especially working for a statutory body, there wasn't a lot of wriggle room. So we looked for other things because they still enjoyed the little pet projects and they also enjoyed the training. So that was always something we could do, give them a little bit of time and also the training as well. But you're right, just after I left, and I like to think the reason one person actually stayed there while I was there, one of them actually left to, I'll say, the dark side, a little bit more money.
Thanks, Rob. Sounds like a recurrent theme. Peter.
Yeah, so my takeaway was that it is important to keep engaging with your people and get them to build their own career path, engage with them in that within the role that they've chosen as a starting point, at least anyway. And you know, if people feel supported, trust will emerge and they open up.
Simple. Trust again, huh?
Mm.
A recurring theme.
If it's all right, I might plant an awkward question for everyone. There's a question, and the people who are in the room with me will know what I'm probably guess what I'm about to ask. There's a question I've asked a lot of developers, and I've noticed that the recurring theme here has been people knowing about their career path and where they're heading and the like, and enabling them to do that. One of the questions I like to ask all of my developers is, what do you want to do at work on the morning that you retire? How many people here think they could answer that? What's that very last day of work going to?
That's almost as bad as where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years from now?
There won't be any work on the last day of before retirement. A lot of celebrating.
Exactly. My response to it used to be, I'm not going to retire. I'm going to die while coding at my desk.
Okay.
And that would have been perfect for me until about 5 years ago. And then I discovered people and that they're far more interesting than code.
Andrew answered on the chat the same thing that he does on Mondays now. I'm assuming, Andrew, you have a 4 days week, short week like I used to have my last tech role.
Actually, it varies between 4 and 3 days depending on how lucky I am. But yeah, I do other things.
Because you're gardening.
Yeah, gardening is one thing. Well done. When your memory is good, Natalie. Or you know, community work, or you know, there's so many things. But I take your point entirely, Michael. Many people wouldn't have a clue what they're going to do the following day, and so it does lead to what is it they're working towards, or what do they value in their lives, which all comes back to the question of self-awareness and introspection, and do they know themselves well enough and to be going in a purposeful direction.
And identity as well, because so many people, and I include myself in the past, you know, have your identity so connected to your role at work, you know, and can be quite dangerous that, because once work is gone, you know, what is left. Okie dokie. Oh my God, this is insane. We have 30 minutes and we are kind of done, so we can finish without rush. That's absolutely beautiful. Anyone else have some thoughts before I have the final slides and maybe the final discussion? No, I'll take silence as a no. No, thanks, Nat. We're good. Okay, so I have just a few slides and then we just can have an open floor as we wind down and finish on time for a change. So yeah, so Michael will kindly add to the chat box the link to our survey. If you can take a couple of minutes, perhaps now, or you can, to answer those 4 questions. It's basically just help us to improve future events. And if you are brave enough to do a video instead, you can also go with the video ask. We are innovating, so we can go with a video ask option instead. So it's really up to you. You can do the Google Forms survey, or you can do the video, and it will be 5 questions only. It's an interesting platform. You might want to experiment with that. And I think that's pretty much, yeah, so that's pretty much it. So before I give you back 10 minutes of your life, precious, let me just stop sharing here. Yes, I want to say a big thank you for your time. Thanks for, making the time to be here. I hope you got something out of the session. Of course, you're welcome to connect with people on LinkedIn, people that you had a chat today. And I'll send the pack to you tomorrow, probably tomorrow afternoon. So you have everyone's name, so you can look them up on LinkedIn. I'm sure everyone will be happy to connect with each other. And the recordings will be available probably on Friday on our YouTube channel if you like to review. So having said that, I would like just to really open forum. I have 8 minutes left. If you like to excuse yourself and get 8 minutes back into your life, that's totally fine. So I'll just say goodbye.